Have you ever woken up one day and felt like nothing is fun anymore? The things that once excited you, the hobbies you loved, even spending time with friends or family, suddenly, they all feel empty. Maybe you've tried to push through it, thinking it's just a phase, but that feeling lingers. You start wondering, why does everything feel so dull? You might have asked yourself, am I broken? Why can't I find joy in the things I used to love? You're not alone in feeling this way. It's a feeling that many of us experience at different points in our lives, and it often leads to frustration and confusion. After all, if you're doing everything right, working hard, maintaining relationships, taking care of yourself, why does the world feel so flat? The truth is, it's not uncommon to hit a point where things start to lose their spark. But the real question is, what is causing this lack of joy? Is it because we've somehow outgrown our passions, or is it something deeper? Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, believed that this feeling of emptiness isn't just about losing interest in things. In fact, he argued that it's a sign of something much more profound happening inside us. According to Jung, when we feel disconnected from joy, it's often because we've become disconnected from ourselves. You see, Jung believed that much of our unhappiness and lack of joy stem from the parts of ourselves that we've pushed aside, parts we've rejected, ignored, or hidden away because they didn't fit into the ideal version of ourselves. These parts make up what he called the shadow self, and when we neglect them, life can start to feel hollow. But here's the thing, this feeling is not a sign that something is wrong with you. Instead, it's an invitation, a wake-up call that something deeper is calling for your attention. The parts of you that have been repressed, the passions you've abandoned, the dreams you've neglected, they're still there, waiting to be rediscovered. So, let's take a moment. Reflect on this. What would it feel like if you could find joy again in the things that once excited you? What if the key to rediscovering that joy was not in changing the world around you, but in changing how you see yourself? Have you ever felt like you're simply going through the motions, disconnected from the very things that once brought you joy? It's like being trapped in a haze, unable to see or feel anything clearly. Carl Jung believed that these feelings are not just random occurrences. In fact, they might be more of a signal from your subconscious, a sign that you are disconnected from your true self. Jung's work on the shadow self helps us understand this disconnection. He believed that within each of us exists a shadow, the parts of ourselves that we suppress or deny because they don't fit into the ideal image we've created of who we should be. The shadow isn't just made up of dark, negative traits like anger or jealousy. It also includes things like our suppressed creativity, unexpressed desires, and emotions we've been taught to ignore or feel ashamed of. These parts, though rejected by the conscious mind, remain a part of us, and they often drive our behaviors and feelings in ways we don't fully understand. So, what does this have to do with feeling like nothing is fun anymore? Everything. According to Jung, when we avoid facing our shadow, we begin to lose touch with the very parts of ourselves that hold the potential for joy, creativity, and fulfillment. Think about it. How often have you felt the pressure to conform to expectations, whether it's from family, society, or even your own internal standards? Over time, these pressures can lead you to repress parts of your true nature, pushing them into the unconscious where they continue to affect your thoughts, feelings, and behavior. The danger here is that when we ignore our shadow, it doesn't simply go away. Instead, it quietly sabotages our happiness from the background. For example, let's say you've spent your life trying to be perfect, always the achiever, always the reliable one, never showing weakness. You might have rejected parts of yourself that were spontaneous, creative, or carefree. Over time, you could find that these rejected parts start to manifest as frustration, anger, or even boredom. The things that used to excite you feel distant and unappealing because you're no longer engaging with the full spectrum of who you are. When we suppress these parts of ourselves, we lose the ability to experience life in its fullest form. It's like walking through the world with blinders on, only seeing what fits within the narrow lens of our ego, the mask we wear to show the world who we think we are. This persona, as Jung called it, is the image we present to others. It's how we want to be perceived: strong, successful, composed, and in control. But the persona is not the whole story. Beneath it lies the true self, the parts of you that are wild, spontaneous, and authentic. The things that bring real joy, not the things that you think you should be doing. Jung explained that the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, requires us to confront our shadow and integrate the parts of ourselves that we've repressed. He argued that it's only when we acknowledge and embrace the parts of ourselves that we've ignored that we can truly begin to heal and experience life in all its richness. The more we deny our shadow, the more we remain stuck in a cycle of inner conflict and unfulfilled desires. But confronting the shadow is not easy. It requires vulnerability, self-awareness, and the willingness to face the parts of ourselves that we might have buried for years. It's uncomfortable, and yes, it's scary. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Many of us are afraid to confront our shadow, because doing so means accepting the parts of ourselves we've been taught to avoid or fear. We might be afraid of the anger we've never expressed, the creativity we've suppressed, or the weaknesses we've hidden away. Yet, when we avoid these parts, we only make ourselves smaller. Jung believed that the only way to truly grow is by embracing all aspects of who we are, both the light and the dark. The things that we've buried deep within us have the power to set us free if we allow them to surface. But we can't experience this freedom until we stop rejecting those parts of ourselves and start integrating them into our daily lives. When we talk about the feeling that nothing is fun anymore, it's important to understand what's happening inside us on a deeper psychological level. As we explored in the last part, Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self holds the key to unlocking this mystery. The shadow is made up of the parts of ourselves that we have either rejected or suppressed traits, desires, or emotions that don't fit with our conscious idea of who we are. These hidden parts of our personality, often formed in childhood or in response to social conditioning, hold an immense amount of energy, creativity, and potential joy. Yet, because we try to hide or deny them, they slowly become more and more powerful, often influencing our thoughts, actions, and emotions in ways we don't realize. So, let's dive into why the shadow self is so crucial to understanding why joy feels like a distant memory. The process of repression happens when we push away feelings, traits, or behaviors that we deem unacceptable or undesirable. From a young age, we are taught what is good and bad. We are told how to behave, how to express ourselves, and what emotions are acceptable. If you were raised in an environment where emotions like anger or sadness were frowned upon, you may have learned to repress those feelings, pushing them into your unconscious mind. But repression doesn't make these emotions go away. Instead, they grow in power, lurking beneath the surface, influencing your life without your awareness. For example, let's say as a child, you loved being creative, drawing, painting, or writing stories. However, over time, you may have been told that these activities were a waste of time or not practical. So you stopped drawing, stopped writing, and tried to focus on things that seemed more serious. Over the years, the creative part of you was pushed aside, but it didn't disappear. And now as an adult, you might feel like nothing excites you anymore, as if something inside you is missing. That lost joy is tied to the repressed creative self, the part of you that was shut down long ago. What makes the shadow so powerful is that it exists in the unconscious mind. The unconscious is like a vast hidden landscape within us, where all of our repressed memories, fears, desires, and parts of ourselves live. Even though we are unaware of them, these unconscious forces still shape our thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. In fact, Jung argued that much of our unconscious content wants to come to the surface. But the more we resist or ignore it, the more it fights back, often through feelings of dissatisfaction, confusion, or, in this case, the feeling that nothing is fun anymore. This is why you might have the sudden urge to do something you've never considered before, or why you feel inexplicably drawn to certain activities that don't fit with your normal life. Your unconscious mind is trying to bring those repressed parts of you into the light. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming your true self by integrating the shadow and accepting all parts of your personality. The shadow doesn't just stay in the background, waiting to be discovered. It shows up in subtle and not so subtle ways. Often, the shadow manifests in projection, when you see traits in other people that you've repressed in yourself. For example, if you have a deep-seated fear of failure but are unwilling to admit it, you may criticize others who fail or avoid people who take risks. Your unconscious mind projects this fear onto others as a way of avoiding confronting it within yourself. The shadow can also show up in emotional triggers. Have you ever found yourself getting intensely angry or upset over something that, on the surface, seems trivial? That emotional reaction is often a clue that something in your unconscious is being triggered. The more you resist it, the stronger the emotional reaction becomes. Jung believed that emotions like anger, sadness, or frustration are often a result of suppressed aspects of ourselves that are fighting to be heard. So, what happens when we begin to acknowledge and integrate our shadow self? When we start to accept the parts of ourselves we've rejected or repressed, we begin to feel more whole. Jung believed that the integration of the shadow is not about eradicating these parts of ourselves, but about embracing them, recognizing that they are a vital part of who we are. This process allows us to experience life with greater depth, creativity, and authenticity. When we begin to accept all parts of ourselves, including the parts we've ignored or feared, we start to feel more connected to our inner joy. For example, if you've repressed your creativity for years, embracing that part of yourself might involve taking up a creative hobby again. No pressure, no expectation, just the act of creating for the sake of creating. Over time, these small acts of self-acceptance begin to reconnect you with the lost joy and excitement that you once had. Jung believed that the process of individuation, integrating the shadow, is a lifelong journey. It's not about achieving perfection or suddenly being happy all the time. It's about becoming more aware of the parts of ourselves we've neglected and accepting them with compassion and understanding. The more we allow ourselves to embrace the fullness of who we are, the more joy we can experience, even in the simplest of moments. When you begin to integrate your shadow, you no longer feel like something is missing. You reconnect with the parts of yourself that make life vibrant and full. And with that reconnection comes the rediscovery of joy, real, lasting joy that isn't dependent on external circumstances but comes from within, from embracing the wholeness of who you truly are. If you've ever wondered why nothing feels fun anymore, it's essential to understand what's happening within your mind. It's not just about the passing phase of life or a lack of interest in the things that once brought you joy. According to Carl Jung and modern psychology, this feeling of emptiness is a result of the ongoing battle between our conscious mind, the ego, and our unconscious mind, a conflict that often goes unnoticed but can significantly affect our experience of life. Jung believed that the ego, or our conscious self, is how we present ourselves to the world. It's the version of ourselves that we shape based on societal expectations, our roles, and the image we want others to see. The ego's main job is to protect us, to keep us functioning in society, and to maintain a certain image of who we are. But while the ego plays an important role, it's limited. It focuses on the external, on what's socially acceptable, practical, and safe. On the other hand, The unconscious mind holds everything that we've repressed: the desires, emotions, and memories that don't align with our ideal image. These include parts of ourselves that we've ignored, rejected, or been unaware of. While the ego tries to maintain control, the unconscious mind is constantly working in the background, influencing our emotions, behaviors, and even our physical sensations. But here's where things get tricky. When the ego and the unconscious are in conflict, we experience inner tension, confusion, and dissatisfaction. The unconscious mind wants to express the suppressed parts of our personality, but the ego fights against this expression, fearing that it will disrupt our carefully crafted identity. This inner struggle creates a disconnection from our authentic selves and can lead to the feeling of emptiness, like nothing is fun anymore, and life feels like a mechanical routine. When we repress parts of ourselves, these emotions and desires don't just vanish. They become trapped in the unconscious, where they continue to affect us in subtle ways. You might find that the things you once loved doing, whether it's pursuing a hobby, spending time with people you care about, or simply enjoying the present moment, no longer feel satisfying. Why is that? The reason is that the emotional energy connected to those activities is blocked. The suppressed aspects of yourself, whether it's your creativity, your need for adventure, or your desire for deeper connections, remain unexpressed, creating a sense of emptiness. You might not be aware of it, but the unacknowledged parts of you are silently influencing your perception of life, blocking you from experiencing the joy and fulfillment you once had. Jung called this state of being split, where the conscious self, the ego, and the unconscious self are not integrated. When this happens, we experience an emotional disconnect, and the joy we once felt in life starts to fade. The ego's job is to protect us from what it perceives as danger, and it does this by keeping us in familiar patterns and behaviors. But when you repress certain emotions or desires, the ego builds up walls to keep them hidden. It fears that if you confront your shadow, if you allow those repressed parts of yourself to surface, it could disrupt your sense of control or identity. This fear of the unknown, fear of confronting the repressed parts of yourself, is often what keeps you stuck. The ego tries to maintain control, keeping you in patterns that are comfortable, even if those patterns no longer bring you joy. This fear of change or transformation is a key reason why we don't experience life as fully as we could. The comfort zone created by the ego keeps us safe, but it also traps us in a cycle of unfulfilled desires. So what can you do about it? How can you break free from this cycle of emotional disconnection and rediscover joy? Jung believed that the only way to truly experience fulfillment was by integrating the unconscious mind with the conscious mind. The process of integration involves accepting and embracing the parts of yourself that you've repressed or rejected. When you begin to acknowledge your unconscious desires and fears, without judgment or fear of disruption, you open up the possibility of experiencing life more fully. This integration doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of becoming more aware of your inner world and accepting all parts of yourself, even the uncomfortable ones. Jung believed that the path to joy lies not in avoiding or repressing these parts of ourselves, but in embracing them. When you make peace with the hidden parts of yourself, you no longer feel disconnected from your true desires. You start to feel more alive, more connected to the present moment, and more in touch with your true passions. The first step in integrating the unconscious mind is awareness. It's about noticing the thoughts, emotions, and patterns that you've been avoiding. When you become aware of the parts of yourself that have been suppressed, you give yourself the power to change your relationship with them. The more you observe your inner world without judgment, the more you can begin to break free from the control of the ego. Meditation, journaling, and introspection are powerful tools that can help bring the unconscious into the light. By allowing yourself to feel and express the repressed parts of your personality, You start to reawaken the joy and fulfillment that have been hidden for so long. By now, we've established that the feeling that nothing is fun anymore is not just a sign of boredom or a simple passing phase. It's a deeper signal, a call from within to reconnect with parts of ourselves that have been repressed or ignored. This disconnection from joy is not the end, but rather the beginning of a transformative journey. And that journey, according to Carl Jung, is all about reconnecting with the unconscious, acknowledging the parts of ourselves we've hidden away, and ultimately integrating them into our lives. But the real question is, how do you begin? How do you rediscover the joy that seems lost and tap into the energy that's been buried deep within? Let's explore the practical steps that can help you on this journey of self-discovery and healing. The first step in rediscovering joy is self-awareness. This involves becoming more conscious of the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that you might have been avoiding. Jung believed that simply observing your inner world without judgment is a transformative process. When you start paying attention to your thoughts, you begin to notice patterns, the things you tell yourself that have been shaped by fear, repression, or societal conditioning. Start by asking yourself, what parts of me have I been avoiding? It could be a neglected passion, a repressed emotion, or a behavior you've been too afraid to confront. It might be a creative spark that once brought you excitement, but has since been pushed aside because it didn't fit into your image of who you should be. One powerful exercise is journaling. Take time each day to reflect on your feelings and your reactions to certain situations. Write down your emotions, no matter how uncomfortable they may feel. Don't censor yourself. Allow your true thoughts and feelings to surface. Through journaling, you can begin to uncover the parts of you that have been hidden away and start to bring them into the light. Jung believed that creativity is one of the most effective ways to reconnect with the unconscious. When we engage in creative activities, we open a doorway to the parts of ourselves that have been repressed. Whether it's painting, writing, dancing, or any other form of self-expression, creativity allows the unconscious mind to express itself freely. If you've lost touch with the things that once made you excited, creativity can be a way to rekindle that spark. You don't need to be a professional artist or a musician to benefit from creative activities. The key is engagement, not perfection. Simply taking time to engage in something creative, without expectations or judgments, allows you to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are joyful, spontaneous, and authentic. Consider setting aside time each week to engage in a creative activity that feels fun to you. Don't worry about the outcome. Focus solely on the process. Whether it's doodling, writing a short story, or trying your hand at photography, let your creativity flow without constraints. Over time, you'll find that these small acts of self-expression begin to bring back the sense of fun and excitement that you've been missing. Many of us struggle with perfectionism, trying to present an image of ourselves that is polished, controlled, and flawless. But Jung believed that true self-expression comes from embracing our vulnerability, the parts of ourselves that we often hide out of fear or shame. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we create space for authenticity. The more you allow yourself to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to express emotions freely, the more you'll reconnect with the joy that comes from simply being yourself. Take a moment to reflect on the areas of your life where you've been holding back due to perfectionism. What would it feel like to let go of those constraints and just be? Whether it's in your career, relationships, or personal life, embracing vulnerability means allowing yourself to experience the messiness and imperfections that make life rich and fulfilling. As we've seen, one of the most powerful tools for integrating the shadow is simply becoming an observer of your thoughts and emotions. Meditation and mindfulness are incredibly effective practices that allow you to step back from the constant chatter of the mind and witness your thoughts without getting caught up in them. Jung often spoke about the importance of being present, of experiencing the moment as it is, without the filter of past conditioning or future anxieties. Meditation offers a way to break free from the automatic patterns of thinking that keep you disconnected from joy. Through mindfulness, you begin to realize that you are not your thoughts, your emotions, or your fears. You are the awareness. Observing them. You don't need to meditate for hours to experience the benefits. Even just 10 to 15 minutes of focused mindfulness each day can help you build awareness of your inner world. Start by focusing on your breath, observing the sensations in your body and noticing the thoughts that come and go. As you practice this regularly, you'll begin to feel more grounded, more connected to the present moment, and more open to experiencing joy in your everyday life. Another way to rediscover joy is by reconnecting with nature and embracing play. Jung believed that our connection to the natural world is deeply rooted in our unconscious mind. Spending time outdoors, whether it's hiking in the mountains or simply walking in the park, can help you reconnect with a sense of wonder and awe. Nature has the ability to bring us back to our core, helping us rediscover the parts of ourselves that are grounded, spontaneous, and full of life. Similarly, embracing playfulness and fun without an agenda can help reignite the joy that seems to be lost. Remember the last time you had fun without any pressure, perhaps as a child, when you could lose yourself in a game or an activity without worrying about the outcome. That sense of freedom and joy is still available to you. Reconnect with that feeling by allowing yourself to be playful again, without expectations or judgment. As we've discussed so far, the feeling that nothing is fun anymore is not just a passing phase or a simple sign of boredom. It's often the result of suppressing parts of ourselves, the parts that hold the potential for true joy and fulfillment. These hidden aspects of who we are, which Jung referred to as the shadow, hold immense creative power, yet they remain dormant when we push them aside. Rediscovering joy is not about chasing external distractions or new activities, but about embracing all aspects of ourselves, both the light and the dark. Jung's philosophy teaches us that wholeness comes from integration, the process of accepting every part of who we are, including those parts that we might find uncomfortable or difficult to face. This concept aligns with many ancient spiritual and philosophical teachings, which emphasize the importance of embracing all aspects of the self to experience true freedom and joy. At the core of Jungian psychology is the idea of individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Individuation is not about creating a perfect version of yourself, but about integrating all the parts of your psyche, including the repressed and shadow aspects, into a unified whole. This process requires facing parts of ourselves that we might have avoided for years, but it is through this confrontation that we unlock the potential for joy, creativity, and inner peace. Jung believed that embracing your shadow doesn't mean simply accepting your negative traits or impulses. Instead, it's about understanding them, acknowledging that they exist within you, and integrating them in a way that leads to greater balance and authenticity. When you acknowledge your weaknesses and fears without judgment, they lose their power over you, and you begin to see yourself not as flawed, but as a human being with depth and complexity. This process of embracing wholeness is not easy. It requires vulnerability, self-compassion, and the courage to face the parts of yourself you may have been avoiding. But it is in this very vulnerability that you find your true power. The parts of yourself that you once thought were weaknesses or imperfections can become your greatest sources of strength, creativity, and joy. Many spiritual teachings emphasize the importance of self-acceptance and embracing all aspects of oneself, not just the ones that are easy to love. Carl Jung's insights align with ancient wisdom found in philosophies like Buddhism, Taoism, and Stoicism, which all encourage us to transcend our limited ego and embrace our authentic selves. For instance, in Buddhism, there is a concept known as the middle way, which teaches that true happiness is found not in avoiding or repressing parts of ourselves, but in accepting the full spectrum of our human experience. Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, not only to things but to thoughts and identities that we cling to. In a similar vein, Jung believed that we suffer when we identify too strongly with a limited sense of self, our persona, and neglect the deeper, more authentic aspects of our being. The Taoist philosophy also teaches about the importance of balance. The Tao, or the natural flow of life, represents the harmonious integration of opposites, light and dark, action and stillness, strength and vulnerability. Taoism encourages us to go with the flow of life, to embrace all aspects of ourselves, and to live in alignment with our true nature. Jung's concept of individuation mirrors this idea of balancing the various forces within us to live in harmony with our true selves. Similarly, Stoicism, a school of philosophy that focuses on personal virtue and wisdom, teaches the importance of accepting the things we cannot change and focusing on cultivating inner strength and peace. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from embracing the present moment and being at peace with our internal world, regardless of external circumstances. This aligns with Jung's idea that true joy and fulfillment come not from changing the world around us, but from accepting and integrating our inner selves. By accepting all aspects of yourself, you become whole again. Jung argued that wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means embracing the complexities and contradictions that make us human. True joy doesn't come from a life devoid of struggle or discomfort. It comes from the acceptance that these struggles are part of who we are. And by integrating them, we become more resilient, authentic, and vibrant. This idea is beautifully expressed in the work of Eckhart Tolle, a modern spiritual teacher who emphasizes the power of presence and self-acceptance. Tolle teaches that we cannot experience true peace and joy until we stop fighting against the parts of ourselves that we perceive as negative. The more we accept our thoughts, emotions, and experiences as they are, without judgment or resistance, the more we step into a state of inner peace, a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. Jung's process of individuation, much like Tolle's teachings, requires us to step beyond the ego and embrace our true nature. This means accepting both the light and dark parts of ourselves, allowing them to coexist in harmony. When we do this, we reconnect with the essence of who we truly are, and from that place of wholeness, we are able to experience joy, creativity, and fulfillment once again. One of the most powerful aspects of embracing our true selves is letting go of the illusion of control. When we try to control every aspect of our lives, our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, we create resistance and block the flow of life. Jung believed that the more we resist the natural flow of our inner world, the more disconnected we become from the joy and spontaneity that lie within us. By letting go of the need to control, we can embrace life as it comes, with all its uncertainties and contradictions. This is where true freedom lies, freedom from the constraints of the ego, freedom from the limitations we place on ourselves, and freedom to live fully, authentically, and joyfully. The power to rediscover joy lies not in external circumstances, but in embracing the fullness of who you are. By integrating your shadow, accepting all parts of yourself, and letting go of the need to control, you can experience life with a new sense of vitality, creativity, and peace. True joy comes from accepting your wholeness, from embracing both the light and dark aspects of yourself, and from living in alignment with your true nature. Jung's teachings remind us that the path to true freedom is not through perfection, but through acceptance. And in that acceptance, we find the joy that has always been within us, waiting to be rediscovered. So far, we've explored the feeling that nothing is fun anymore, and how this sense of emptiness and disconnection is often the result of ignoring or repressing parts of ourselves, parts that are essential to our joy, creativity, and fulfillment. We've learned how Carl Jung's ideas on the shadow self, individuation, and the unconscious mind help us understand why we feel stuck, and how integrating our shadow can lead to profound transformation. But now we reach the most powerful part of this journey, the realization that true freedom and joy come from awakening to our true self. It's not about chasing happiness or constantly seeking out new distractions. It's about uncovering the joy that's already within us by embracing all of who we are, without fear or resistance. One of Jung's most profound insights was that true freedom comes when we realize that we are not our thoughts, not our emotions, and not our past experiences. We are the awareness that observes them. This realization is what Jung called the awakening of consciousness. When we awaken to the truth that we are not defined by the stories we tell ourselves or the roles we play, we free ourselves from the limitations of the ego and the unconscious mind. The moment we realize that we are not the sum of our thoughts and experiences, we step into a state of pure awareness, a state where we can observe our thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. This is the key to reclaiming our joy and freedom. When we stop identifying with our thoughts, they lose their power over us. We no longer feel trapped by our fears, doubts, and anxieties. Jung explained that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires this awakening. It requires stepping beyond the ego and the unconscious mind to discover the deeper, truer parts of ourselves. This process is not a one-time event, but a continuous journey. It is through self-reflection, awareness, and acceptance that we can begin to experience life more fully and authentically. One of the most difficult aspects of this journey is the need to surrender, to let go of the need for control. So much of our life is spent trying to control our thoughts, our emotions, and the outcomes of our actions. But true freedom comes when we release the need to control and allow life to unfold naturally. This surrender doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means trusting that everything we need is already within us. It's about letting go of the illusion that we have to force life to fit a certain image or expectation. When we stop trying to control every aspect of our lives, we create space for spontaneity, joy, and creativity to flow. Another key to unlocking true joy is embracing the present moment. So often, we find ourselves trapped in the past or the future, dwelling on mistakes we've made or worrying about what might happen. But as Jung and many other spiritual teachers have pointed out, the only moment that truly matters is the one we are experiencing right now. When we focus on the present, we step outside the grip of our conditioned thoughts and fears. We begin to experience life as it is, not as we imagine it to be or wish it would be. This moment-to-moment awareness is where joy resides. It's not in the future or the past. It's in the now. Living authentically means being true to yourself, embracing who you are, not who you think you should be. When you live authentically, you act in alignment with your true desires and values, not based on the expectations of others. This is the essence of Jung's individuation process, the path of becoming who you truly are, free from the constraints of societal conditioning and the limitations of the ego. Living with authenticity also means living with purpose. Purpose doesn't have to mean some grand world-changing mission. It can simply mean doing what brings you joy and fulfillment. It's about living a life that is meaningful to you, one that reflects your true self. When we live with purpose, we align ourselves with the flow of life, and in that flow, joy naturally arises. When you begin to embrace all aspects of yourself, your shadow, your light, your fears, your strengths, you unlock your limitless potential. You stop holding yourself back with self-imposed limitations and begin to move freely through life. The very parts of you that once felt like obstacles become your greatest sources of strength and creativity. Jung believed that we are all capable of great transformation, and it is through the process of self-acceptance, self-awareness, and integration that we begin to fully step into our power. The more you accept yourself, the more you let go of the illusions and constraints that hold you back, the more you experience the freedom and joy that are already within you. Now that you understand the root cause of the feeling that nothing is fun anymore, it's time to take action. The journey of rediscovering joy and embracing your true self begins with awareness, becoming conscious of the parts of yourself you've been avoiding or repressing. It's about being honest with yourself, accepting your shadow, and integrating it into your life. Start today by reflecting on the parts of you that have been hidden or ignored. What passions have you repressed? What fears have you avoided? What parts of yourself have you rejected in the past, but are ready to embrace now? The road to rediscovery isn't easy, but it's worth it. You don't need to change who you are. You simply need to rediscover who you've always been. And in doing so, you'll unlock the joy, creativity, and fulfillment that have always been within you. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. And when you realize this, you step into a state of freedom and joy that has no limits.